Hello, good people, and welcome back to Play Posit. In today's lesson, we'll be talking about politics and legislatures, so how our two political parties either do or do not get along, or how they try to play each other and interact in order to get laws passed and to make sure that their own party's interests are advanced. Okay, so the first key factor in a legislature is determining who has the majority and who has the minority. So we know, because we're intelligent, that a majority is the party with obviously more people and the minority party has less. So this is important because if you're trying to choose a leader, you have to have the majority. So currently, in 2019, prior to this year's congressional elections, the Republican Party has a 6-ish seat majority in the Senate, and the Democratic Party has a 112 so seat majority in the House. So the Democratic Party, since they have the most people out of the two parties in the House of Representatives, they got to choose their leader. And the current leader of the House, which we call the Speaker of the House, is Nancy Pelosi. So she leads all 435 people, and she got chosen because she is the leading Democrat. Now, adversely, in the Senate, the Republican Party has the majority, and they get to choose the leader of the entire Senate, known as the Senate Majority Leader. This man's name is Mitch McConnell. He is a Republican senator from Kentucky, and he was chosen by all the Republicans in the Senate. So if you have the majority party, you get to pick their leader, and if you want a law passed, it's significantly easier to do so. We'll skip that for now. All right, so some good things and some not so good things about Congress, especially when we talk about people acting a fool and misbehaving. That can come into play, especially if there is a lot of social turmoil going on out in society besides Congress. So first, let's talk about benefits before we talk about people wilding out. All right, so some good things or benefits about being in Congress: they have an average salary, so an average yearly pay of $174,000 a year. Now, this does not mean that that's all they make per year. That's just an average. Some people make more, some people make less. So to kind of put that in perspective for you, that's $14,500 per month. Per month, okay? The average household income in the United States of America is about $50,000 a year, so about $4,000 a month. So Congress typically makes 10 grand more per month than the regular people that they represent. They also receive what's called a franking privilege. This sounds explicit, but it is not. A franking privilege just means that you are able to send mail. And you can send mail for free. So mailing things at the post office is not free. You got to have a stamp, and wherever you're sending it is going to determine how much money it is. So if I ship a package to California, it will be significantly more expensive than if I ship it across the state to Boone, or if I ship it down to South Carolina or somewhere just a little more close, okay? So franking is to send mail for free. This is especially helpful when you are a representative, because you are in charge of 800,000 people. If you want to send 800,000 letters, that's going to cost you a lot of money. So instead of making taxpayer money pay for this, it's just free. They get to use the post office for free. If it's on official business, not just to get your package from Amazon. That's not free. All right, they get office space across the street from the Capitol building. They receive immunity. So when they are in other countries, if they break a law in another country, they can get just sent back to the United States, and we are not going to put them on trial, which makes other countries very irritated, but helps protect our people. They also receive retirement benefits. They receive health care benefits through Obamacare and another insurance policy. They also have a congressional gym, which would be kind of weird since you have a whole bunch of old white men in Congress, but I mean, you do you, boo-boo. All right, and in terms of punishments, so what happens if they don't get all the benefits, or what happens if they don't act right, okay? So here's Congress. Here's the average American citizen. Here's Congress way up here. And it's just gotten significantly higher in the past few years. All right, so this is kind of what it would look like if someone sent you a letter from the House of Representatives or from the Senate. And speaking of punishments, what happens if you act a fool? Well, if you act not a whole fool, but maybe a third of a fool, and you kind of just do something stupid, or you decide that you're going to go wild out in Las Vegas for a weekend and somebody catches you on Snapchat, that's going to get you what's called a censure, okay? So a censure. It's not a literal slap on the wrist. Nobody is slapping anyone. It's more of a warning about your actions. So this is like you can go to SMC type deal, or you can go to ISS because you got in a little bit of trouble. The more serious one up here is expulsion. All right, not explosion. We're not bombing anybody. No one is going to blow up. All right, and expulsion means you are kicked out. It is the verb version of expelled. Okay, so you can get kicked out or expelled by a 2/3 vote in Congress, or a magic fraction. All right, and you have to make sure that both houses are willing to do so. No one has gotten kicked out of Congress in a long time. The last person to get kicked out of Congress did so because he hired a prostitute or a sex worker and got caught, and then ended up resigning before he could get kicked out. So he quit before he could get fired. All right, number 3 is districts and gerrymandering. So this is where legislatures get a little sneaky, okay? So in order to figure out who represents what section of the state, first we have to draw lines and make sure that our state is split up into different sections. So let's go over here to this part real quick. What is a district? It is literally just a section of either a county, a city, or a state that shares representatives. So we have a district for the United States House. We have one for the North Carolina House, one for the North Carolina Senate, one for the judicial circuit, so when we choose our judges, one for the district attorney. We have all kinds of different lines, imaginary lines, that crisscross North Carolina and split us up into chunks so that we can be represented. All right, the second word here is apportionment, which means that each district is based on population. So you could have a teeny tiny little district and then a huge district, but they have not exact, but they have roughly the same amount of people. So for the United States House of Representatives, you have 800,000 people per district. Charlotte could be its own district by itself, just like you'd have to split the city of Charlotte up in half, and then we have 8 counties that could be put into a district over here in the eastern part of the state. So it just depends on where people live. All right, and then the last one, when we talk about districts, each local government has to have a charter. So in order to qualify to be a town and to be represented, you have to be a part of a local government, and that local government has to have what's called a charter, which is permission from the state government to exist. So when Greenville decided to be a town back in the mid or early to mid 1800s or 1700s. I don't really know when it got founded. It was a while ago. I wasn't alive. So they had to go to the state legislature, and somebody had to horse and buggy it up to Raleigh and be like, hey, can we be a town? And the state legislature in Raleigh was like, you know what? That's fine. Let's have a Greenville. Okay, so a district is just a section that shares representatives. So if someone says, well, I live in Bethel, I'm out of your district, myself and someone who lives in Bethel do not have the same representative because we're not in the same district with those imaginary lines. All right, so how in the world do you get a district? Well, you have to take a census or a population count, and that happens every 10 years. So this will happen in 2020. That'll be the next time this happens. It happens on every decade. So we take just a big head count. And so all this data is used to apportion districts or split them up. So like we said when we talk about the Electoral College and the House of Representatives and the number of electoral votes you get, so first we got to take a head count. And then let's say in 2020, we discover that 800,000 more people live in North Carolina than they did the last time the census was taken. This means that instead of 13 people in the House, we have 14 people in the U.S. House, okay? And then based on how many people we got, we chop up our state into different pieces based on our new data and all the new people who live here. Okay, if you want to make sure that your district is as big as it can possibly be, you as a local government might consider annexing an area, so adding a nearby area. If you're driving down Fire Tower Road in Greenville, you might not actually be in Greenville. You might be driving through Winterville, but based on annexing, it just depends where you're at, okay? So annexing is to add an area, Please don't get this confused with zoning. They are two different things. So annexing is to swipe another area into your town. All right, so the town of Blackjack is its own town, but they have a Greenville address because the city of Greenville is like, you know what? If we add them into our city limits, we can take taxes from them. We can charge them for county water. We can charge them for county electricity, all of that good stuff. So you get taxes. The city gets tax money out of it. They get more people in their voting district. And overall, they grow a little bit as a town. All right, so districts in politics. So gerrymandering is creating a district that favors a certain political party. Currently, we have 13 districts for the United States House of Representatives. 10 of them have currently been gerrymandered, or they have been drawn purposely so that there are more Republicans than Democrats in that district. And therefore, regardless of who is running for office, a Republican is going to win 10 out of the 13 districts. North Carolina is the worst state for gerrymandering in the 50 United States of America. The worst. We have had an entire Supreme Court case about it, and the Supreme Court of the United States, literally those old people up in Washington, D.C. were like, listen, this is not how we do things. This is actually not okay. You can't do it. And we were like, you know what, fam? You're right. Okay? And we'll watch this video a little later. All right, so number 4, so just we can just go ahead and get these things done. So we're going to go away from districts and away from constituents, and we're going to go towards actual pieces of legislation. So sometimes in order to get someone to sign a law that does not, or to vote for a law that doesn't really agree with you on anything or doesn't really see eye to eye with you on any subject, you're going to have to bribe them a little bit. Okay, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Okay, so a rider is an unrelated piece of information on a bill. So let's say, for example, we are passing a bill about legalizing marijuana. Okay, and you got to get a whole bunch of old white men to be like, weed is fine. That's going to be kind of difficult for you. So if you have a really stubborn person, let's say, for example, you have a really stubborn person in the United States Senate. I'm going to pick on Mitch McConnell because he's the current Senate Majority Leader. Let's say that Mitch McConnell, who is very anti-marijuana in general and has been very vocal about that, he'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not letting this pass. If you wanted to get him to vote for it, you might try to sweeten the deal for him and be like, listen, Mitch, I can throw you in like $800,000 for you to repave your roads in parts of Kentucky if you will vote for this bill. Now, roads in Kentucky has got not nary a thing to do with weed. However, it's going to cause him to sign that bill. Okay, that's a rider. An earmark and pork barrel spending are the same thing. So not only are they similar to a rider, an earmark and a pork barrel are the same thing, okay? So they both mean spending money on a specific project, but pork barrel is the negative version of this and earmark is the positive version of this. So if you're like, you know what, I'll go ahead and we'll legalize weed. I'll give Mitch McConnell $800,000 to repave his roads. I'll give Senator Olympia Snowe from Washington State, I'm going to give her $900,000 to redo all of the staff lounges in the Boeing factory where they make airplanes up in Washington State. I'll give her that because I want them to vote for this bill. So it's basically bribery with a fancy name. Like, I'll give you this much cash if you vote for this bill. Like, not specifically you as a person cash, but cash for your constituents. Okay, so a rider is unrelated info, and then an earmark and pork barrel spending are unrelated info that comes with money attached. So this has been the conclusion of Unit 4. Congratulations, you have successfully learned about the legislative branch.